Welcome to a new video, guys. We're gonna do something completely different today. I've organized a bit of a tournament. I'm gonna have the 10 largest countries in terms of population duke it out for the crown. We're looking for the best country on the planet, the best country in the solar system. And in order to determine who wins the tournament, we're gonna look at 4 metrics. The 4 metrics that I think are the most important, the most valuable when looking to determine what the best country is. So, starting with metric number 1, meat consumption. I want meat consumption to be as high as possible. Have you ever heard of a country that's a great country full of vegans? Well, I haven't. That's because there's an airplane passing by. You can't have a great country full of vegans. So that's metric number 1. Metric number 2, fertility rate. We want the fertility rate to be as high as possible. The best country needs to be expanding at an exponential rate. So we want a lot of babies, fertility rate needs to be as high as possible. And the third metric is crime rate. We want crime to be as low as possible, obviously. You can't have a great country if you're constantly worried about being robbed at gunpoint. I'm looking at you, America. And last but not least, the most important metric on the list, BMI. BMI stands for Big Mac Index, by the way. We want food to be as affordable as possible. So a low BMI is better. And we're going to take all these metrics. I'm going to give each country a score for every metric. And then at the end of the tournament, we're going to add up all the scores and see which country performed best and walks away with the crown. The best country in the solar system. Are you ready? Let's do this. Let's roll the intro. Okay, so this is the scoreboard. We're going to start from the bottom, the smallest country in terms of population, and work our way up to India, the most populous country in the solar system. Every country gets between 1 and 10 points for every metric, depending on how well it scores on a particular metric. It doesn't get any easier than this, so let's start. Mexico, the land of birria tacos. With an average meat consumption of 65 kilograms per year, Mexico is 4th, so it gets 7 points for meat consumption. The fertility rate in Mexico is 1.8, that's below the replacement level of 2.1. So in order for a country to sustain its population, it needs a fertility rate of 2.1, at least 2.1. That's 2 kids to replace the parents, mom and dad, and 0.1 to compensate for infant mortality. But that doesn't take into consideration migration flows and changes in life expectancy. All those have impact on the total population. So a country could still grow with a fertility rate below 2.1. With that being said, Mexico scores 6th in fertility, so it gets 5 points. Moving on to the Mexican crime rate. Mexico is known to be amongst the most dangerous country on the planet. It's full of cartels duking it out for supremacy. The country is America's most important drug supplier, with most of the drugs going into the United States coming in from the southern border. Mexico is 7th in terms of crime, so it gets 4 points. With that out of the way, it's time to look at Mexico's BMI, the Big Mac Index. A Big Mac costs about 91 pesos in Mexico, which converts to about 519 USD, which puts it in 9th place. There's only one country where the Big Mac is more expensive than in Mexico. So Mexico gets 2 points for its BMI, bringing it to a total score of 18 points. On to the next one. Moving on to the Russian Federation, the country that Vladimir Putin calls home. Meat consumption is through the roof in Russia, with an average meat consumption of 87 kilograms per year. Only one country scores higher. Can you guess which one? We'll get to that in a second. So Russia gets 9 points in the meat section. You know, I know so little of the Russian cuisine that I wouldn't be able to name even one dish. Which is crazy, it's such a large country. You would think that its cuisine would be a bit more, I don't know, famous. There's so many more smaller countries like Italy, Spain, France, whose cuisines are much more renowned than the Russian one. Let me Google the most popular dish in Russia. Borscht. That sounds disgusting. Let me see what it looks like. Actually, that looks very good. Let me see what gives it that red color. Borscht is a sour soup made with meat stock, vegetables and seasonings, common in Eastern Europe and Northern Asia. In English, the word borscht, most often associated with the soup's variant of Ukrainian origin, made with red beetroot. That's what gives it the red color, beetroot. It sounds like something I would actually enjoy. I'm going to try to make it this week. I'll post the results on my Instagram. So make sure to follow me on my Instagram to see the result. But okay, Russia got 9 points in the meat section. Moving on to the Russian fertility rate. Russia has a fertility rate of 1.5, which is really bad. Well below the replacement level of 2.1. That puts it in 9th place, so it gets 2 points. In terms of the Russian crime rate, I'm happy to report that crime isn't as rampant in Russia as I expected. It scores 39 on the crime index. With that lower crime rate, Russia scores 2nd of all the countries, so it gets 9 points. Moving on to the most important metric, the BMI. Big Mac costs about 400 rubles, which converts to about 454 USD. That puts it in 6th place for 5 points, for a total of 25 points. Good job, Russia, you easily beat out Mexico. Moving on to Bangladesh, the world's garment factory. In terms of meat consumption, Bangladesh really needs to up its game. According to the latest data, the average Bangladeshi consumes about 4 kilograms of meat per year. That's about 4% of what the Russians consume. That puts Bangladesh on the 9th spot, so it gets 2 points. In terms of fertility, Bangladesh has a fertility rate of 1.9, which puts it in 5th place for 6 points. Okay, moving on to the Bangladeshi crime rate, with a crime index of 61.6. Bangladesh belongs in the 8th place, so it gets 3 points. And now for the all-important Big Mac index. A Big Mac costs about 575 taka in Bangladesh, which converts to around 490 USD. That's very expensive. Bangladesh gets 3 points for a total of 14. That's really bad. The Bangladeshis really need to start upping their game in terms of meat consumption and start lowering their crime rate. Moving on to Brazil, the home of the real Ronaldo. I wonder what he looks like nowadays. I haven't seen him in decades. Wait, that can't be him. Is that really him? Whoa. What about Ike Batista? How are his businesses going? Wait, he lost all of his money and his companies are bankrupt? Oh my god, that's insane. Anyway, as expected, Brazil is one of the largest meat consumers on the planet, with the average person eating around 77 kilograms of meat annually. That puts it in 3rd spot, so it gets 8 points. By the way, I personally try to eat around 200 grams of meat per day. That's usually enough for me to hit my protein goal. 200 grams times 7 is 1.4 per week, times 52 is around 73 kilograms per year. That's the amount of meat I consume, so that's a bit below the Brazilians. Okay, moving on to the Brazilian fertility rate, which is 1.6. Nothing to write home about. It gets 3 points. Crime is really high in Brazil. It's the country with the 2nd highest crime rate of the 10 countries we're looking at today. So it gets 2 points. And finally, the most important metric, a Big Mac costs about 27 real in Brazil, which is about 481 USD. That puts it in 7th spot for 4 points, which means that Brazil has a score of 24 in total. Moving on to Nigeria, the home of Burna Boy, where half the country is a prince for some reason. Somehow I keep sending money to random Nigerian princes as they request via email, but as soon as they receive the money, they just stop talking to me. I don't know what that's about. Maybe the Nigerian viewers can comment down below what's happening. You just know the Nigerian fertility rate's gonna be through the roof.
Oh, did I just do a racism?
The average Nigerian eats about 7 kilograms of meat per year, which is not that much at all. How is that even possible? I thought Nigerians love meat. Doesn't jollof rice always come with some form of protein, chicken or beef? And since it's the most popular dish in Nigeria, you would think that they consume a lot of meat, but I don't know. I'm just wrong, I guess, because I have the data here. But at least Nigerian women are eating more dog meat than men. Wait, what does that even mean? Who's asking the question of who is eating more dog meat, Nigerian men or women?
Oh, did I just do a racism?
The right question to ask is who the f eats dog meat? So I came across this article when I was looking for data on Nigerian meat consumption, and let me tell you, it might be worth a read. I'll link it in the description down below. Let me quickly give you one quote from the article. So Nigerian women cherish dog meat much more than men nowadays, Mr. Enyang said, adding that every woman wants a smooth skin. So apparently some women believe that eating dog meat gives you smooth skin. I don't know. Anyway, Nigeria gets 3 points for its meat consumption. Now this is the one we've all been waiting for, the Nigerian fertility rate. Drums please! Nigeria has a fertility rate of 5.0, meaning that the average Nigerian woman makes 5 babies in her lifetime. And that's just the average. There's women making many more babies than 5. That's crazy to me. Nigeria gets 10 points for its fertility rate. The first country to score a 10 on one of the 4 metrics. Good job, Nigeria. Moving on to the crime rate. Unfortunately, the crime rate is through the roof in Nigeria. It's the highest of any of the country we're going to look at today, so it gets a 1 for its crime rate. But maybe Nigeria can make up for the high crime rate in cheap Big Macs. A Big Mac costs about 3,700 Naira in Nigeria. In USDs, that's about 229, which is really cheap. Actually, that's the cheapest of all the 10 countries we're going to look at today. So Nigeria gets 10 points for its BMI. That brings it to a total score of 24 points. All I can say is Nigeria is a land of contradictions. It goes from a 3 to a 10 to a 1 to a 10. Anyway, say hi to Burna Boy from me. Thanks. Moving on to Pakistan, the home of Imran Khan. I wonder how he's doing. Wait, he's in jail? I thought he was the most popular politician. Well, apparently fortunes change. Ask Ike Batista. Anyway, the average Pakistani eats about 17 kilograms of meat. That's good for 6th place and 5 points. The fertility rate must be high. Somehow the less developed a country is, the higher the fertility rate. I don't know how that works. Maybe people just don't have anything to do and they just start making babies. That's the only thing they can do when they're bored.
Oh, did I just do a racism?
So the average Pakistani woman makes about 3.3 babies in her lifetime. That's the second highest fertility rate of all the 10 countries we're looking at today. That's 1 below Nigeria, so Pakistan gets 9 points. Pakistan is third when it comes to its crime rate, so it gets 8 points. Somehow I expected much more crime in Pakistan. But yeah, what do I know? Keep in mind, crime might not always be reported, so the crime rate could be much higher. But if it's not reported, the data that we have just shows a much lower crime rate. Okay, so now for the most important metric. A Big Mac costs about 940 rupees in Pakistan, or about 337 USD, which is good for 7 points, for a total of 29 points, the highest score until now. Good job, Pakistan.
Pakistan Zindabad! Pakistan Zindabad!
But maybe one of the last 4 countries can beat Pakistan, who knows? Let's see. Moving on to Indonesia, the land of nasi goreng and Joko Widodo. The world's most important swing state. Will it move towards China? Will it move towards the United States? Who knows? That's why it's such an important country. Anyway, the average Indonesian consumes about 12 kilograms of meat per year, which is good for 7th place, 4 points. The fertility rate's exactly on replacement level, which is good for 8 points. Indonesia is still growing though, since life expectancy is growing. Crime is average in Indonesia. It gets 6 points for 5th place. And finally, the most important metric, I keep saying it, the most important. But a Big Mac costs about 3,900 rupiah in Indonesia, which is about 243 USD. Good for 2nd place, 9 points. Indonesia gets a total of 27 points, right below Pakistan's 29 points. The United States of America. Finally, we're getting into superpower territory, the land of Tupac, Hunter Biden and Elvis Presley. I would be surprised if the United States doesn't claim the top spot in terms of meat consumption. It's the home of the triple bypass burger. Americans love overeating. It's their national pastime. Every competitive eater that has ever lived comes from the United States. The average American consumes 124 kilograms of meat per year. That's insane. Keep in mind, that's the average. That includes all the vegans and vegetarians.
Paul, it feels fucking good. You and your small dick and your pussy way of killing animals, and it feels good for the vegans. Are you a fucking psychopath or something?
Again, I consume about 70 and I feel as though I'm eating a lot of meat. I don't know how I could eat more than that. But anyway, the United States claims the top spot in terms of meat consumption, so it gets 10 points. The American fertility rate stands at about 1.7, but the United States is absorbing so many migrants that it's still growing relatively fast. The United States gets 4 points for its fertility rate. Obviously, crime is going to be very high in the United States with all the bullets and hot dogs flying around. The United States claims the 6th spot in terms of crime, so it gets 5 points for its crime rate. Moving on to the most important metric, the Big Mac index. Is the Big Mac cheap in the home of the Golden Arches? No, it's not actually. It's very expensive. More expensive than in any other country we're going to look at today, so it gets 1 point for its BMI, for a total of 20 points. So the US is not even in the top 3. Pakistan is still the #1 country so far. If you love babies and cheap food, that is. Moving on to China, the home of BYD, Xiaomi and the squatting uncle. Can the new superpower beat Pakistan? Let's see. The average Chinese person consumes about 60 kilograms of meat per year. That's not bad, but not extremely good either. China claims 5th spot with 60 kg, that's good for 6 points. In terms of its fertility rate, China is a disaster with a fertility rate of 1.2. It's the lowest on our list, so it gets 1 point. In the coming decades, China is going to experience an unprecedented population decline. It's forecasted to shrink from 1.4 billion now to 700 million in 2100, in the year 2100. That's insane. It's going to become half the size it is right now. I'm not saying the one-child policy is to blame, but the one-child policy is definitely 100% to blame. India's population in the meantime is expected to stabilize around 1.5 billion by the year 2100. That's going to have huge ramifications for the balance of power in Asia. By the time we're old, everything's going to look completely different. Moving on to the Chinese crime rate. This is where China really shines. China has the lowest crime rate of all the 10 countries we're looking at today. So it gets 10 points. In terms of China's BMI, there's not much to say. It's average. A Big Mac costs about 25 yuan in China, which is about 3.5 USD, good for 5 points. China scores a total of 23 points. Moving on to the last country on the list, the most populous country on the planet with 1.4 billion people. India, the home of Modi, Pani Puri and the Taj Mahal. Indian meat consumption is the lowest of all the countries on the list, so it gets 1 point for its meat consumption, which already makes it impossible for India to beat Pakistan. It would need at least 2 10s and a 9 to beat Pakistan, and there's no more 10s left. So yeah. With that being said, I'm just going to give you the rest of the scores. India gets 7 points for its fertility, 7 for crime and 8 for its BMI. Sorry India, but your nemesis Pakistan beat your ass with a total score of 29 points. Pakistan is hereby crowned the best country on the planet to live in. Well, that's if you consider the 4 metrics that I use to be the most important ones to determine whether a country is great or not. I'm sure all of you agree, especially the vegans out there. Let me know what metrics I need to look at in my next video. I think I'm going to stick with this format if it's received well for the coming 2 or 3 videos. Make sure you like the video if you actually enjoyed it, or don't, who cares? Subscribe if you want to see more of my videos. I'll see you in the next one. Peace!